On today's episode of Empowering Women in Real Estate, the podcast, I'm going to be talking about what I thought success would mean at 53.
Hi, I'm Karen Cooper, a wife, mom of three, real estate broker, team owner, and founder of Empowering Women in Real Estate. As a realtor, I've personally helped well over 700 families in my career, and now I help thousands of women from all across the country balance real life and real estate through daily inspiration, motivation, and actionable plans to increase their success. Listen in as I share stories and tips from my life and business and interview some of my favorite people.
Hi there, I'm so glad you're here for today's episode. So if you are listening to this episode on the day that it airs, it is the day before my 53rd birthday. And I don't know about you, but I feel like when I get to like this time of year, like around my birthday, I start to get like a little reflective, and I don't know if that's just a getting older thing, but I find that I reflect a little bit more, and especially I kind of reflect a little bit more over the previous year because, when you get to 53, I'm pretty confident that I'm probably about 2/3 of the way through my life, right? And so, I'd love to get to 93 and maybe so, but I don't know. So, kind of makes you pay attention a little bit more to how you're spending your time and how you are, like what your thoughts are, because you start to realize that the time is not infinite. Like there is a time limit. And, you see this with your kids. When my kids were little and they were playing sports, there were seasons where, all three of them were in baseball and it was crazy. And it was multiple practices every week and multiple games and this one here and this one there. And, and so I just remember kind of being in the middle of that and feeling like this will never end. You felt like you had plenty of time. You felt like there was just an infinite, there's going to be another season and then another season and then another, like it's just going to keep going. And then you get to the point where I am now, where my oldest son just graduated from college and he was a college athlete, and my middle has graduated and my youngest no longer plays. Like we're done with sports. Like that season is done in my life until, maybe there's grandchildren later on. And so, as you get older, you start to recognize that things don't just continue forever. And so it makes you be a little bit more reflective. And so I have often done an episode around my birthday with kind of different lessons and things like that. And so I thought for today, what I wanted to talk about was what I thought success would mean at 53. And the main thought that I had around this is that I thought I would have it all figured out by now. And I'm just going to pause and let that sink in for a minute. Because when I look back 10 years ago, 20 years ago, when I was starting my career 24 years ago, I think you look ahead at yourself when you're, middle age or, you're in your 50s, and you just kind of think that you'll know, right? You'll have it all figured out. And the truth of the matter is, I don't have it all figured out. And what I'm realizing is that I don't think you ever have it all figured out, because as soon as you kind of figure out something, whether it's a particular season of your life, or I would think about this a lot when my kids were little, it seemed like just when you found a rhythm with their age or their development level, where they were in school, then you entered a new season, right? The summer came, or this next school year came and everything was different, or, they got older and, the development changed. And just as soon as you feel like you've kind of got a grasp on it, it would shift. And I have learned that that does not change ever. ever in our lives. It is like we are in a constant state of evolution. And I think we fight that a lot. And I know that there were definitely a lot of times when I fought that. But truly, when you can learn to stop fighting that, kind of continual evolution, that's when things really sort of start to open up for you. Because I think we have, and this was me for many years, we have a tendency to want to kind of like, okay, this feels good right now. I understand this right now. My business is stable right now. I'm comfortable with this right now. So I'm going to hold on to this as tight as I possibly can. But that doesn't work. And it might work for just a little bit, but then as life starts to change and business starts to evolve and the industry starts to shift and markets change and family dynamics change and whatever happens, then if you were holding on with a death grip, you're fighting it twice as hard, and it becomes twice as hard. And so I really thought that I would have it all figured out by now, and I really don't have it figured out. And I'm not sure I ever will, and I'm okay with that, actually. 7 years ago, I burned out in my business again. That was what, I don't know, the third time. I have truly loved my real estate career. I truly have. It's been, it's 24 years. It's actually 24 years next month. But it's hard. It's hard. And 7 years ago, there have been times when I burned out before where that burnout was really strictly just related to my business. And maybe you can relate to this too. Like the burnout was really solidly from my business, from the amount of business I was doing, from and I've always been a boundaries person, but not enough. And, I've always been a systems person, but not enough. There's just something that this business does to you. But 7 years ago, when I burned out, that was the first time that burnout was really not just from my business. And in fact, it was really from everything else that was happening in my life. And that is something that all of us go through at a certain point as you start to age, whether it's your own health or the health of family members or family members passing away, needing to take care of people. Like, there was a season that was so hard. I can't even put into words how hard it was. And it was one thing after another thing, after another thing, after another thing. And just when you thought that, it couldn't get worse, it got worse. And that was brutal. That was truly brutal. And even once I kind of moved out past, that situation and situations, plural, it took me a few years to really get myself right again. Because once, you operate in adrenaline when you're dealing with these challenging situations, and that kind of gets you through it, but it's afterwards when you start to really feel the effects. And so there were, it took a long time, and I started to say to like regulate my nervous system again, but it's definitely, it's not regulated. So that was a surprising moment, time for me. That was kind of surprising because I thought that burnout was just strictly going to be related to my work, that I was going to go through periods of my work where I was burned out and it was just because of my work, right? But really, it was because of my life as a whole, and of course, work is part of that and how my work fit into that. And so that was kind of eye-opening. I did not realize that that was what was going to happen in my life. And so that kind of changes, when you go through seasons like that, it really does kind of change what success means to you. And it changes how you view your life and how you view what's important. I thought, thinking about myself, 20 years ago, when you're in your 20s, looking ahead and thinking about who I would be at 53 or, what I would be like in my 50s, I think I thought what a lot of us think, right? That you would be more confident, that I would have less pressure in my life because I've kind of figured everything out, right? So I don't have that pressure, that I'd have more balance in my life because my kids would be older and grown, some grown and whatever, that I would maybe stop questioning or doubting myself as much, that I would have a lot of freedom. And what I realized is that actually none of that is true. None of that is true. When it comes to freedom in your life, to me, I define freedom by being able to work on what I want when I want. That's freedom to me. The freedom to kind of choose what my work looks like and how I do it. I mean, that's really freedom to me. And I realized that I have to create that freedom for myself because no one else is going to create it for me. No one else is going to say, "Hey, oh my gosh, you've done so great. You've done all these amazing things in real estate now for more than 2 decades, and so you can do whatever you want now." No one is going to do that for you. Literally, no one is going to do that for you. You have to do that for yourself. You have to identify and get clear on what you want and what you want your life to look like and what you enjoy doing and how you want to focus your time. And you have to create that freedom for yourself or it literally won't happen. When it comes to like self-doubt and questioning myself, like I almost actually feel like I question myself more now. And I've gone through phases where I question myself more now than I did when I was younger. I think when you're young, there's a certain amount of just kind of being naive. I was almost more confident then. And a lot of that, I think, came from just being naive, being naive about what life was like, and being naive about what it really took to run a business, being naive about relationships and how people are, and just being really naive about a lot of that stuff. And so once you know how a lot of that works, self-doubt has been hard. It's been hard. Confidence has been hard. And I think part of that also comes from social media. You know, thanks to social media, the world is basically in front of us all the time. And it is moving faster. Trends are moving faster, literally, than any of us can keep up. And you get why, right? Because if there are no trends, or no new like shocking news or shocking things in the real estate industry to talk about, then all the people that make money off of that and all the people that get, likes and views and whatever, they're not going to get that. So there's a certain amount of chaos that has to be created. And I'm not saying it's good. I'm just saying what happens. Like there has to be a certain amount of chaos that has to be created and, manufactured trends that have to be created to get our eyes, to get our dollars, to get our interest, to get our time. But then what happens is when we can't look at it through the correct lens, then we end up bouncing from trend to trend, to thing to thing, to, well, this person said this, well, this person said that, well, what about Zillow? Well, what about Compass? Well, what about this one? What about Remax? Well, what about Real? Well, what about EXP? Well, what about this? And then you almost become paralyzed because of just the constant amount of noise and information that is being thrown at you nonstop. And, I don't think any of us saw that coming. And it's hard. It's hard when, a lot of my business for a decade, more than a decade, actually, probably about 15 years, more than 15 years, one of the pillars of my real estate business has been social media. And, both my real estate sales business and then, of course, my business of being a team leader and, the business of empowering women in real estate, it comes from social media. And so it's not like I can just turn it off and walk away from it. So it's kind of a challenge that I did not realize that I never thought that would kind of be a thing. I think I thought that success at this age, I think I always viewed that fulfillment and achievement were kind of the same thing. And I think a lot of us are kind of taught this way, right? And it's where that empty feeling comes from. And I see this with a lot of women. You work so hard to achieve this and achieve that and this award and that award and this thing and that thing. And we somehow equate that, well, when I achieve that, then I'm going to have the fulfillment. I've made it. I'm going to get there. But what happens is you realize that they're not the same thing. Fulfillment does not come from achievement. And when we operate so much of our life, and I think especially the real estate industry tries to teach us this, on I'll be happy when I'm the top producer. I'll be happy when I hit this volume. I'll be happy when I hit this. I'll be happy. But that target is constantly moving. Real quick, before we get back to today's episode, I just want to share something with you that I am genuinely excited about. And that is our Empowering Women in Real Estate annual conference. And it is now officially open for registration. This year's event is our 6th annual event. It is going to be on September 29th and 30th at the Crown Plaza Hotel in Dulles, Virginia. For the first time ever, this year's event is 2 full days. So, if you've been a longtime listener of the podcast or member of our Empowering Women in Real Estate community, you already know what this community is all about. And this conference is that, but in person. We always have some really serious content, some real strategies, and the type of conversations that really make a difference in your business. So this year we're doing 2 full days, which means we get to go deeper on all of the topics that we're going to be covering, more time with our speakers, more time with each other, more time to really think about what you're going to do differently, get clear on what you need and want in your business. So registration is open now. The link to get all the details about this year's event is in the show notes. And you can also go to our website, empoweringwomeninrealestate.com, and click on the conference. And I would love to see you there. And it's not okay, I achieved this, I'm at the top of the mountain, yay me. Okay, well now the next mountain is ready for you to climb up. And so it doesn't stop. And so when our fulfillment is based on how much we have achieved or how much we can achieve, then you just feel empty. There's an emptiness, there's a hollowness. And it took me a long time, and there was definitely a transition period for me in understanding this. And a lot of this came around when I came out of production, actually for the second time. First time was when I was a managing broker. The second time was 7 years ago. And I don't serve clients myself anymore, but I still prospect every week. I still generate a lot of business, and I work with my agent partners to serve that business. And so I thought that, and we're taught in our business, that your success is based on a number, a volume number, a transaction count, this status or that status, or, I got one today. And our industry they feed this. All these little people out there have figured out that we are all desperate for achievement, and that we are all desperate to prove that we're number one because of this title and that title and this number and that number. And so have you ever noticed all of the awards? And if you could see me, I'm doing quotes, right? All the quote unquote awards. I got one today. Top Agent Magazine. You qualify for la 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 la, and this and that. And so I naively thought, oh my gosh, that's great. Thank you so much for reaching out. This is wonderful. But, my business partner might be better for this. But if you have something for teams, this is something. And then I realized that it's just a pitch. And then they send me the form, which tells you how much you have to spend in order to get the acknowledgement. And there is so much of that. Like, I don't even know that any of these awards are real anymore, because most everything has a dollar figure that's attached to it, that, you have, your investment for the recognition is crazy. And so when we attach our fulfillment to that, man, that is a slippery slope. And I didn't realize that. And at 53, I do. And so it has really shifted the way that I think. And I'll talk more in a minute about kind of what fulfillment really does mean to me now. And so it has really changed a lot for me from that perspective. I realized, I didn't really realize this, and I think when you're young, you don't realize this, but I realized that your health really matters. I saw a quote the other day that said, we spend our health creating wealth, and then there comes a time where we end up having to spend our wealth to try to get back our health. And I find that to be so true. I've seen so many examples of that. I've seen it in my own life. We don't take care of ourselves, and we really take our health for granted. there's another saying, something like, you don't really have any problems until health is your problem. And then that's like your only problem, right? I've gone through a lot of things. And I remember there was a certain season and I was going through a lot of testing and preparing for surgeries and all kinds of things. And, like the day before, like my calendar is full and my to-do list is full. And then the next day, I suddenly have nothing. Everything is scans and appointments and doctors, and like that becomes your focus. And so it changes you. It helps you to realize that, your health is the most important thing. What good is selling 100 houses a year, if you're 50 or 60 years old and, you can't hardly walk because your knees are bad or your hips are bad or, whatever, insert whatever, ailment. And so your health really matters. I've realized the importance of sustainability. There's always a period, I think, that a lot of us have in our lives when you can run hard. I think about when I was young and all the different things that I did and could handle, and the early first decade of my career. And, you can muscle through a lot and you can make a lot happen strictly on grit and muscle and hustle, right? But there comes a time in your life when you can't do that anymore, or you don't want to do that anymore, either because of just your own health or what else you're caring for in your family and your life. And so I realized how important sustainability is, creating a business that is long-term sustainable, that doesn't require, I don't want a business that is only going to be good, that's only going to be profitable, that's only going to work based on how hard I can work. I want a business that is magnetic. I want a business where I'm able to attract the business that I want and the people that I want and the clients that I want. And I want to be able to work in a way that is sustainable over a long term. I remember having a conversation with my business partner. I don't know, it was a year ago, maybe 2 years ago. And she's like, I maybe have a couple years left. Like, I can't keep doing this. And I had really shifted a lot of things in my business. And I honestly and truly, and kind of where I am in my business today, I could do this for another, 10, 15 years, more than that, maybe even. I mean, I genuinely love to work and it's kind of a part of me. And so being able to create my business in a way that has that sustainability, which isn't evolving. Because if I look at how my business used to operate 10 years ago or 15 years ago or 20 years ago, that was not sustainable. But because I was willing to, shift and evolve and change over time at multiple periods, then I kind of am at a point where I do kind of have that long-term sustainability, which feels good. And I didn't realize that that's what I will be looking at 53. At 53, authenticity matters, I think, more to me than it ever has. There's so much emphasis, I think, especially in our business, to follow the model and do what this one does on social media and do what that one does. And there's a lot of advice that you get on how to get your business started, on how to keep your business running. Well, you should do it this way and you should do it that. There's a million ways, and there's good and bad news in that. The bad news in that is that can be really overwhelming when you don't know who you are, and that can be really overwhelming when you are not trying to be who you are. You're just trying to be and do what somebody else did that was successful for them, and hoping that, gosh, maybe this will help me to be successful. Instead, the good news of that is there's a million ways to be successful in this business. And so the more clear that you can be on who you are and who you want to work with and how you want to work and what you want that to look like, then you can craft that into whatever you want. And that is actually a really, really beautiful and amazing thing and gift that we have in our business if we are willing to have the courage to do that. If I was to summarize this episode, what success is for me at 53, it's kind of that, it's being able to authentically be me, authentically do the work that I love in the way that I do it, and work with the people that I want. And so that's an amazing thing. I have found that daily gratitude, little bits of joy, matters more than you think. And if you follow me on Instagram, and if you don't, I would love it if you came and connect with me there. I'm at karen.w.cooper. And every morning I share a picture of me with my coffee cup and my pajamas. And, especially right now, this time of year, that's outside, which is my favorite thing, sitting out on the porch in the morning. And I get so much joy out of just the tiniest thing of like, okay, and this sounds so silly. Like, does my coffee cup coordinate with my pajamas? Like, I literally, like, my husband will laugh at me when he's home and he sees me doing it. And I'm like picking, okay, which mug? But it's a tiny little thing. And it's a tiny little moment of just joy and happiness that I just genuinely enjoy. And so I have found that the more that we can find those little moments in our life and recognize those in the day to day, then that just can kind of change everything, because otherwise we are so mired down. And I say this with complete conviction because the last like week and a half has really kind of been this way for me, and I've really been struggling with it, just completely overwhelmed. I spread in a lot of directions, spread really thin, and just kind of struggling. And when I get like that, I kind of bounce around from thing to thing, and I sort of struggle to like bring it all together. And so it would be really easy for me to just get stuck deep in that to-do list of the things that need to happen. But instead, when I can just take little tiny moments, which again for me is usually in the morning, and find those little spots of joy, it really means a lot. And it really changes my energy and it changes my day. So I'll kind of start to bring this around to a close with a couple of lessons that I have learned here at 53. And then, kind of a little perspective shift on sort of where I was kind of early in my career and what's important now. And then, just kind of wrap it up. So a couple lessons. You will not be able to please everyone. And this is really hard. I've always said that I am a recovering control freak, and I'm also a recovering people pleaser. And it's hard. I want everyone to like me. And the more you're in this business and the more you do and the more success you have and the bigger business that you build, the more you are going to come across people that will not like you. And that's okay. They're not bad. I'm not bad. We're just not for each other. And that is hard, but you will not be able to please everyone. And so since knowing that you will not be able to please everyone, then you might as well spend some time trying to please yourself. If the decisions that you make around your business and around what you're doing are geared towards trying to make other people happy, often at the expense of yourself and your own happiness, it's not going to work, because you're not going to be able to make everybody happy. You're not going to be able to please everyone. You're not going to be able to make everyone love you and like you. So instead, you might as well, and I struggle with this every day, but you might as well try to please yourself and make yourself happy. Because when you operate authentically, then the people that also authentically like you are like you, enjoy your style and the way you work, then they're naturally going to be attracted to you. That's a lesson that I think I have learned over and over again and will continue to learn over and over again for the rest of my life. Another lesson is how I spend my life is my responsibility. Kind of goes back to what I was talking about with freedom, right? No one is going to say, to you, do this to bring yourself some joy today, or take some time today and find some peace. Like, that just doesn't happen, because everybody else is living their life too and just trying to survive it. So they're not going to look at you and give you permission and tell you to go find your joy, or to go, or to whatever. Like, you have to, it's your responsibility to spend your life in the way that you want. If you have a dream to live in a certain location, if you have a dream to operate a certain kind of business, if you have whatever it is, you have the responsibility. It's on you to lean into that and to try to make that happen and to, to take action steps and whatever that is. No one else can do that for you. And the faster you learn that and the faster you realize that, then the less time you're going to waste and the more intentional time that you can spend. And then one last lesson on that is you don't have to do things the way you've always done them. And in fact, you shouldn't. And that kind of brings us back around from where I was talking in the beginning about, sort of the evolution of our lives and in our businesses and how things are just constantly changing. And I know I've gone through this on multiple stages of my career of just kind of thinking like, okay, this works. So I'm just going to do this forever. I'm going to stick with this model forever. I'm going to stick with this company forever. But you realize that things start to change, and that as things change, other things become more important and other opportunities present themselves. And, it doesn't mean that, what you used to have or what you used to do is bad in any way, or it's not where you're at now or where you're going to. And so it's okay. It's okay. And it's actually really good for you to be aware of that and to be keeping your eyes open for opportunities and ways to evolve. So, kind of where I'm at, I guess now, at 53, early in my career, when I think about the early years, even before my real estate career and stuff that I did before real estate, I was always a leader, and I created opportunities for myself. That's what I did. And now I help other people to lead, and I create opportunities for others. That's kind of the sort of the evolution of my fulfillment, right? My personal fulfillment. And I think a lot of us maybe go through those phases, where it was all about me being the leader and me being in charge and me creating opportunities for myself. Whereas now I am never so thrilled as when, leaders emerge within our team, and we see this constantly and leadership opportunities happening within our Empowering Women in Real Estate community. And so I love seeing that, and I love cultivating that, and then creating opportunities for other people, whether it's, that was like my only business goal that I set this year for 2026 was creating opportunities for other women, visibility opportunities, helping them to be seen, leadership opportunities, creating spaces where they could lead, creating income opportunities, opening doors to new revenue for other women, connection opportunities, helping the right people to meet each other, connecting the right people, and growth and learning opportunities, creating access to different insights and things that others might be able to benefit from. And so that's fulfillment for me in my career and in my life right now. So I don't want to spend the rest of my life recovering from the business that I built. I love my business. Don't get me wrong. I have loved it. Not every minute of it, but I have loved it. But I don't want to spend the rest of my life recovering from it. And that is what happens when you don't take care of yourself. And that is what happens when you are not clear on who you are and what you want and where you're going. And that is what happens when you are afraid to evolve and you are afraid to grow and you just try to keep it the way it used to be. I don't want any of that. I don't want to have to constantly be in recovery from what I've built. I want what I've built to be able to continue to grow with me, to be sustainable for the long term, to tap into who I am authentically, which is kind of the final point for today is, here I am at 53 tomorrow. I'm not trying to be someone new. I think that's a misconception that a lot, you hear about like midlife crisis, right? There's a lot of jokes usually around that. And I think sometimes it's because there's a misconception that people hit a certain age and then they try to become someone new. And it's not that. I'm not trying to become someone new. I'm just trying to be honest about who I already am, who I always have been. That is a gift that midlife can give you and maturity can give you when you get to a certain point that you start to, you kind of can become unapologetic, and it's not that you can only do that now. I see some younger women in the industry that they're definitely unapologetic about who they are. And I really applaud that. And I think that, it makes everybody better when you're able to do that. And that's just what I want. I just want to be more of who I am, who I already am. and just feel free and comfortable and confident in that, and knowing that that is who I am is enough, and it's worthy, and that I will find the people that are for me. That's just the beauty of what's available. So yeah, so that's it. That's what I thought success would mean at 53, and what it actually is, and what it actually looks like. And so here I'd love to say here's to another 53. But that would be something, right? That'd be 106. So I don't know, maybe. But for right now, 53 is good. Happy with 53. And that's it. So thank you so much. Thank you for listening today to today's episode. If you are not already a subscriber to the podcast, I'd love for you to do that. And until next time, stay well.
Thank you for listening to Empowering Women in Real Estate, the podcast. Click subscribe to be notified every Wednesday when our latest episode is released, and be sure to check out our group on Facebook.